Every day, we see the darker side of the world around us. We witness how people can hurt others in ways that are hard to understand. It's a sad part of life, but it's something we can't ignore. As someone who dives into the world of crime, I'm here to share the most shocking stories and try to understand what drives people to do such things. I'm Michael, and today, I've got another unreal true crime story for you. In the early hours of August 24th, 2016, a quiet neighborhood in Albuquerque, New Mexico, was shaken by desperate knocking on a neighbor's door. Michelle Martins and Fabian Gonzalez stood there, injured and panicked, claiming they had been attacked. Their story was chaotic and full of shocking details. But when the police arrived at their home, they discovered something far more horrifying than anyone could have imagined. What started as an ordinary night had turned into a nightmare. Questions about what really happened, who was responsible, and why it occurred would leave everyone stunned. As investigators dug deeper, the heartbreaking truth about what happened to 10-year-old Victoria Martins would shock the entire nation. Victoria Martins was born on August 23rd, 2006, in Albuquerque, New Mexico. She was the daughter of Michelle Martins, a single mother who claimed that Victoria's father abandoned them before she was even born, refusing to meet his child at the hospital. When Victoria was just 3 months old, Michelle began a relationship with Jason Uring. He was committed to building a stable family life, and 2 years later, they welcomed a son, Matthew. Jason later shared that he cared deeply for both his biological son and Victoria, who he described as a bright, loving child. However, following his separation from Michelle, staying connected with the children proved challenging. Victoria was remembered as a radiant little girl with a kind heart, a wide smile, brown hair, and light eyes. Her grandparents, John and Pat Martins, adored her and often called her their little queen. They cherished outdoor activities with her, frequently visiting a local park in Albuquerque where she loved to ride her bike, skate, or play. Victoria also had a passion for swimming and gymnastics, and her joyful personality made her well loved among her peers. Her grandfather John often said she could light up a room with her laughter, paired with a charming sense of humor. Although details about her family life were limited, there were signs that things began to unravel after Michelle and Jason parted ways. Michelle's personal life took a chaotic turn as she pursued numerous relationships, bringing various partners into her home. This raised concerns for Jason, who worried about the children's safety, though Michelle dismissed his concerns, asserting that he had no right to interfere in her life. In July 2016, Michelle met Fabian Gonzalez through an online dating platform. Their relationship progressed quickly, and Fabian moved into Michelle's home with her 2 children. Shortly after, Michelle introduced another individual into their lives, Jessica Kelly, Fabian's cousin, who was recently released from prison. Fabian insisted Jessica had nowhere else to go and convinced Michelle to let her stay temporarily. By early August 2016, Victoria and Matthew found themselves living with 2 strangers, one of whom had a criminal record. Victoria's once stable home life had become deeply troubled. Friends and relatives noted that Michelle had once been a responsible mother, but her judgment seemed to falter as her involvement with Fabian and Jessica deepened. Victoria celebrated her 10th birthday on August 23rd, 2016, unaware of the tragedy that would unfold in the early hours of the next day. On the night of August 24th, chaos erupted in their Albuquerque neighborhood. Michelle and Fabian frantically banged on a neighbor's door, visibly injured and bleeding, claiming they had been attacked with a metal bar by Jessica Kelly. They added that Victoria had also been assaulted. Alarmed, the neighbor called 911, prompting a swift response from authorities. When police arrived and entered Michelle's home, they discovered a horrifying scene. The smell of smoke led them to a closed bathroom door, and what they found inside was beyond comprehension. Victoria's lifeless body had been dismembered, wrapped in fabric, and set on fire. Even seasoned officers were unprepared for such a gruesome sight. Michelle, Fabian, and Jessica were immediately taken into custody. While Michelle's statements provided a basis for the investigation, her account was riddled with contradictions and inconsistencies. As detectives pieced together the events, one fact remained undeniable. Each of the three detainees had played a role in the horrific events that led to Victoria's death. Michelle's ever-changing stories added layers of complexity to an already devastating case, leaving authorities to sift through a web of lies and half-truths to uncover the truth. Initially, Michelle claimed that she and Fabian Gonzalez were attacked by Jessica Kelly, who allegedly stormed into their bedroom, shouting and repeatedly asking if they believed in God. According to Michelle, it was only when she tried to flee the house to get help that she heard Jessica scream that Victoria was no longer alive. However, her story began to shift as the hours passed. In a new version, Michelle stated that she and Fabian had left the house that night, leaving Victoria alone with Jessica, since Matthew was not home. When they returned, Michelle claimed to have found Victoria dead after accidentally ingesting methamphetamine that Jessica had left out on a table. According to this account, Fabian and Jessica then threatened to kill her if she tried to escape or report what had happened before deciding to dispose of Victoria's body. Given the glaring inconsistencies between her statements, detectives applied additional pressure, telling Michelle that Fabian was confessing everything in another interrogation room, a tactic designed to elicit a reaction. While Fabian was being questioned, he had not actually admitted to anything yet. Under mounting scrutiny, Michelle changed her story again, revealing a disturbing history of abuse toward her children. Over the course of 8 grueling hours of interrogation, she confessed that, in the months leading up to Victoria's death, she had brought men into her home to harm her children. She admitted that she derived a twisted satisfaction from witnessing these acts. According to Michelle, this pattern of abuse began with an ex-partner she discovered attempting to assault Victoria. Although she ended the relationship, she continued arranging encounters with other men, often drugging the children to keep them subdued during the assaults. She stated that she met these men through a dating platform, using coded language to identify individuals with similar interests. This was also how she had met Fabian. Jessica's arrival in the household only escalated the violence. Initially, Michelle denied knowing about Jessica's role in the abuse, but she eventually admitted that both Fabian and Jessica had assaulted Victoria on multiple occasions in the days leading up to her death. Michelle also confessed that she had witnessed both Fabian and Jessica giving methamphetamine to Victoria on the night of her death as she begged them to stop. She further admitted to watching Jessica attack Victoria with a knife, but did not intervene. Chillingly, Michelle revealed that she and Fabian had sex approximately 20 minutes after Victoria's death. They then began cleaning up the scene before running to a neighbor's house to seek help, with Fabian closely following her. These revelations painted a picture of incomprehensible cruelty and left investigators grappling with the sheer horror of the events. Fabian, questioned twice by police, provided fragmented and contradictory accounts of what had occurred. In his first interview, he claimed that Jessica had only planned to stay one more night with them. He admitted that family members had warned him about Jessica, advising him not to let her stay in the apartment, especially with two young children living there. Despite being aware of the risks, Fabian said the decision had already been made, and they felt they couldn't turn back. As the interrogation progressed, detectives noticed inconsistencies in Fabian's behavior and statements, which raised further suspicion. For example, Fabian described how he and Michelle fled the apartment after being attacked, without making any effort to rescue Victoria or return for her, despite claiming to be concerned for her safety. Instead of asking about Victoria's well-being, Fabian seemed preoccupied with whether the police had spoken to Michelle. In his second interview, Fabian gave a different and less detailed account of the events, which not only contradicted his earlier statements, but also failed to align with Michelle's evolving narrative. After continued questioning, Fabian eventually admitted to witnessing Jessica attack Victoria with a knife, while Michelle allegedly pleaded with them to stop. Fabian eventually admitted, seemingly with remorse, that he should have intervened to protect Victoria. However, he justified his earlier lies as a reaction born out of fear. He also claimed that the injury to his eye was caused during his alleged fight with Jessica. Later, this was proven false. The injury had resulted from an unrelated incident, further undermining his credibility. Investigators noted that Fabian's ever-changing statements and omissions hindered their ability to reconstruct the events, pointing to an attempt to manipulate and evade responsibility. Jessica Kelly's testimony, on the other hand, shocked investigators due to its stark contrast with the accounts of Fabian and Michelle. She claimed that while she and Victoria were in the apartment, under the influence of drugs, an unknown man with a Mexican accent broke in. According to Jessica, this man was responsible for Victoria's death before fleeing the scene, but not before threatening her life if she didn't dispose of the body. Some media outlets speculated that the man had warned her to handle the body or face severe consequences. Other reports suggested that he might have been someone Fabian had met in prison and who had come to settle a score. Jessica claimed that Fabian and Michelle returned to the apartment after the incident, and it was then that she and Fabian began cleaning up and disposing of the remains. However, this account introduced a new, unidentified suspect whose existence could not be corroborated. Efforts to verify Jessica's story revealed that no neighbors reported seeing a stranger that day. Moreover, evidence from the crime scene did not support the presence of this mysterious man. Jessica's credibility deteriorated further when neighbors reported seeing her carrying Victoria down the stairs and hearing screams from the apartment at around 3 a.m., coinciding with the suspected time of the incident. As the investigation continued, authorities uncovered disturbing details about the dynamics within the household. Among the evidence seized was a video camera, which investigators suspected might have been used to record abusive encounters involving Victoria and Matthew. Additionally, forensic evidence pointed to the active involvement of all three adults, Michelle, Fabian, and Jessica, in cleaning the crime scene and attempting to conceal the evidence. Fingerprints and other physical traces tied all three to the efforts to cover up the crime. With mounting evidence against them, Michelle, Fabian, and Jessica were formally arrested. Each faced a $1 million cash-only bail. Michelle was charged with child abuse resulting in death, while Fabian and Jessica faced not only the same charge, but also additional allegations of sexual abuse and murder. At their preliminary hearing on September 16, 2016, all three pleaded not guilty to the charges. The judge, however, ordered them to have no contact with one another, ensuring that no collusion or interference could take place as the case moved through the courts. Detectives continued their efforts to piece together the tragic chain of events leading to Victoria's death. Evidence was closely guarded to protect the integrity of the investigation and the judicial process. In November 2016, an autopsy report was revealed during another preliminary hearing, sending shockwaves through the community. The report confirmed that Victoria's cause of death was asphyxiation caused by pressure applied to her neck. Additionally, she had suffered sexual assault and multiple stab wounds. Toxicology tests, however, showed no presence of illegal substances in her system, directly contradicting Michelle's earlier claims that Victoria had been forced to consume drugs that night. DNA analysis of samples taken from Victoria's body, clothing, a trash bag, sheets, and a knife yielded surprising results. While male DNA was detected, it was insufficient to identify a specific suspect. The testing did confirm that Fabian's DNA was absent, which led investigators to believe that the thorough cleaning carried out by the suspects had effectively destroyed critical evidence. This lack of conclusive forensic results caused significant delays in the case. In January 2017, a new prosecutor took over Victoria's case, expressing concerns about the mishandling of the initial investigation and subsequent legal proceedings. Determined to ensure no stone was left unturned, the prosecutor assembled a new team of investigators to re-examine the case. This renewed effort aimed to uncover overlooked evidence and finally bring clarity to the events that led to the heartbreaking death of Victoria Martins. In the months following the tragedy, investigators conducted hundreds of interviews, meticulously piecing together every detail in an effort to understand how events unfolded and what could have been done to prevent them. By May, prosecutors petitioned the court to hold separate criminal trials for the three defendants to ensure fairness in each case. The motion was granted, with Michelle's trial scheduled first, followed by Fabian's and then Jessica's. However, significant delays arose due to various complications, while police work continued to uncover critical evidence. A thorough review of earlier procedures revealed evidence that contradicted the narratives provided by all three defendants. Phone records showed inconsistencies in their claims about their activities on the night of Victoria's death. Judicial documents revealed that the trio had used their phones before and after the incident, communicating with each other and with other individuals. GPS analysis further demonstrated that neither Fabian nor Michelle was in the apartment at the estimated time of the crime, casting further doubt on their statements. Authorities reconstructed the timeline of events leading up to Victoria's death, analyzing movements between the afternoon of her 10th birthday and the fatal early morning hours. Victoria arrived home by bus around 4 p.m., at which time Fabian and Michelle were not at the residence. The couple returned briefly and left again multiple times throughout the evening. Their final return occurred shortly before their confrontation with Jessica. Detectives concluded that at least one of their outings was to purchase drugs, explaining why Victoria had been left alone with Jessica. This new information prompted investigators to send DNA samples to an advanced laboratory in Florida for a more precise analysis. The results led to some charges against Michelle and Fabian being dropped, as evidence confirmed they were not in the apartment at the time of Victoria's death. However, the most shocking discovery from the Florida lab validated one of Jessica's most controversial claims: the presence of an unidentified man. This revelation opened new investigative avenues and ran parallel to the ongoing court proceedings. Jessica's trial was the first to conclude. In September 2018, a judge rejected a proposed plea deal. By January 2019, Jessica was cleared of sexual abuse charges due to a lack of forensic evidence. However, fingerprints found at the crime scene tied her to key actions, including handling items used in the aftermath of Victoria's death. Jessica admitted to cleaning up and trying to flee the scene, attributing her actions to guilt and paranoia fueled by drug use. She even described waking Fabian in the middle of the night to read Bible passages to her in an attempt to calm her hallucinations. In a surprising turn, Jessica accepted a plea agreement in which she admitted to reckless child abuse resulting in death. In exchange, other charges were dropped, and she agreed to testify against Fabian and the unidentified man if he were ever brought to justice. In April 2022, Jessica was sentenced to 50 years in prison with 6 years suspended, leaving her to serve 44 years behind bars. Upon release, she will face 5 years of probation. Fabian's trial faced repeated delays and an unusual development. In November 2019, he was released on probation. The court determined there was insufficient evidence to prove he posed a societal danger. His first hearing took place in July 2022. During the trial, Jessica testified against him as part of her plea deal, recounting the entry of the unidentified man into the apartment and Fabian's subsequent role in cleaning and dismembering Victoria's body. She revealed that, in her drug-induced panic, she had even considered killing both Fabian and Michelle before burning down the apartment. The prosecution focused on proving Fabian's role in tampering with evidence. A forensic scientist was called to testify, presenting findings from over 80 pieces of evidence. Although Fabian's fingerprints were only found on a mop, suggesting his involvement in cleaning the scene, prosecutors argued he bore responsibility for Victoria's death. Jessica's testimony and the physical evidence painted a picture of Fabian's participation in the aftermath, though questions remained about his precise role in the crime itself. As a result, prosecutors requested that the charge of child abuse be classified as a violent felony, which would require Fabian Gonzalez to serve at least 85% of his sentence before becoming eligible for parole. The defense argued against this, claiming that Fabian should not be held responsible for the crime. They emphasized that the initial accusations were based on Michelle's false confession and pointed out that the true perpetrator remained at large. In late 2022, Fabian Gonzalez was sentenced to 37.5 years in prison. However, under the terms of his sentencing, he could apply for parole after serving 50% of his sentence. During the hearing, John Martins, Victoria's grandfather, delivered a victim impact statement pleading with the judge to impose the full weight of the law. He expressed his anguish over losing the chance to see Victoria grow up, graduate, or walk down the aisle, moments he and his family had dreamed of for years. Michelle Martins was the last of the 3 defendants to be sentenced, and her case presented unique challenges. Due to her numerous conflicting accounts and the lack of evidence supporting key parts of her statements, including claims of sexual encounters with unnamed individuals, authorities deemed it necessary to conduct a psychological evaluation. The results revealed that Michelle exhibited personality traits that made her highly susceptible to providing false confessions. A specialist who interviewed her testified in court, describing Michelle as one of the most easily manipulated individuals he had ever encountered. This led prosecutors to propose a plea agreement, which Michelle accepted in June 2018. She admitted her responsibility for leaving Victoria in Jessica's care, an action that ultimately resulted in her daughter's death. Though her admission of guilt occurred in 2018, her sentencing was delayed by 4 years. Finally, in November 2022, Michelle was sentenced to 12 years in prison, with 6 years credited for time already served. Victoria Martin's case is a heartbreaking reminder of the vulnerabilities children face in unsafe environments. Throughout the lengthy legal process, the community came together to honor Victoria's memory and push for meaningful change. They also rallied to support the law enforcement officers who had witnessed the harrowing crime scene, ensuring they received recognition for their difficult work. Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel, Latin Crimes, where we dive into the gripping true crime stories of Latin America. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations.